Criticism of the press is good, but hatred is dangerous and anti-democratic. That was the message from yesterday's Sunday Herald as it published an unprecedented open letter to readers from its editor Neil Mackay. He said the paper, which supports Scottish independence, faced an outburst of anger on social media over its coverage of the recent pro-independence march through Glasgow. Meanwhile, Alex Salmond took to Twitter to say he'd cancelled his subscription to the paper over the coverage. His tweet came after yesterday's front-page story about him and his RT show, which he dismissed as a showpiece, a smear piece, I beg your pardon. We invited the Sunday Herald's editor onto tonight's programme, but he was unable to join us. But we are now joined by the journalist and former Labour advisor Simon Peer, who became a supporter of Scottish independence in 2016, and the blogger Peter Bell, who writes a column for iScot, a pro-independence magazine, whose mission is to report on the stories and angles often missed by mainstream media. Thank you both for joining us. Peter Bell, why are you so critical of the Sunday Herald?
Even Neil Mackay admitted that the picture was a misjudgment, I think he put it. He said that the image did not truly represent the march.
And that's images of independent supporters and unionist protesters.
Yes, it was an image which was framed and cropped to show virtually equal numbers of British nationalists and marchers. But it went beyond merely failing to truly represent the march. It actually misrepresented the march. It made it look like the unionist protesters were a much larger group than they actually were. And of course there was the caption as well, which sort of rubbed salt in the wounds as it spoke of ugly confrontations. There were no ugly confrontations, and the term confrontations suggests two groups coming together in some sort of aggravated manner, but the groups never got close to one another. Okay. There were no ugly confrontations.
And as Simon, as Peter Bell saying, that the Sunday Herald admitted failures in the report, particularly in that front page photograph.
I think the Sunday Herald, I don't know if they're worried about readership. I think they've capitulated too much in this. I think they should have been a lot firmer in facing up to criticism on social media. Mainstream media is panicking too much, and I don't like what is happening. I think the Yes movement is shooting itself in the foot. The Sunday Herald backs independence. If anything, the Sunday Herald is paying a price for being not enough of a critical friend of independence, and that it's only recently been critical of the SNP. But I think this is a symptom of something that is really worrying, and people have every right to question the mainstream media, and there's huge issues about media ownership. But this smacks a bit to me of what's happening with Trump in America, people attacking the media, and it's time people stood up for journalists. And also we've seen it with Brexit down in England, people attacking the media as well. And I think in Scotland, people in the media have got to step forward, and people in the Scottish Nationalist Party have got to step forward as well and nip this in the bud.
No, certainly the Sunday Herald didn't accept all the criticisms there. But what about that point that Simon's making, Peter? Are you, by people withdrawing subscriptions from the Sunday Herald and pro-independence paper, are you, as one person said, starving an ally?
Well, we'll have to question now whether the Sunday Herald is a pro-independence paper. I mean, that was not...
It is. Neil Mackay says it is.
I know what Neil Mackay says, but I also see what was in the paper. And that image and the words accompanying it would not have been out of place in any British nationalist publication. And also the narrative, the language of the whole piece, especially in Neil Mackay's open letter. That is the narrative of the British state. That's the narrative of the British propaganda machine, and he seems to have slipped back into that.
What about Simon's claim there that some supporters are like supporters of Donald Trump in their criticisms of the media?
Yeah, well, that's one of David Leask's favourite terms. Anybody who criticises journalists is a Trumpist, Trumpist. That's just nonsense. That's just label.
I can say the Sunday Herald is not an agent of the British state. It's not part of the propaganda machine. It is ridiculous for the nationalists and Yes supporters to turn on the Sunday Herald like this. Paul Hutchin, I think it was, who wrote the article the week before, and then he's upset Alex Salmond with this piece about Litvinenko's Marina, the widow. Paul's one of the top investigative journalists in Scotland. You look at his record, Peter, he's taken down and exposed Labour politicians, Lib Dems, Conservatives.
Well, shouldn't Peter? Shouldn't the media be critical and unbiased?
Of course, I don't have a problem with that at all. What we have in the media in Scotland, I prefer to get away from this word bias. There's definitely bias there. I mean, the British media in general is biased in favour of the British state. It is part of the British establishment. We have to expect that it will be biased in favour of the British establishment. The problem is an imbalance. We get these social imbalances. Gender inequality is an example, and usually we address them. Eventually we try to address them in some way. And I think what's happening here in Scotland is an attempt to address this issue of imbalance in the media. And you have to admit there is massive imbalance in the media. And incidentally, I don't think, I am not sitting here accusing Neil Mackay and the Sunday Herald of going over to the dark side. Quite honestly, what I saw when I saw that image and the caption accompanying it was an attempt at sensationalism, which was unfortunate.
Simon, does the media have a case to answer?
Which part of the media? Does the Sunday Herald have a case to answer? No. If anything, they have a case to answer is stiffen up their backbone.
But what about the print media generally? And I do specify the print media because they operate under different rules.
Yeah, sorry. I have always said that it was healthier for Scottish politics to reflect the nature of the country and the makeup of it, that there wasn't pro-nationalist newspaper, pro-independence. The Sunday Herald's gone some way towards that. But also other papers, even the Daily Record has gone out of its way to be fair to the Yes movement and nationalists. They have SNP politicians writing for the paper. And there's this paranoia that has kicked off, particularly social media throws fuel on the fire. It's going right across the Western world. And I say it's time for people to stand up, because most journalists go out there, and unlike people on social media, they're checking their facts, the hundreds and thousands of words that go out every day that are either broadcast or on print or online. It's amazing how accurate they are. And for people to attack the media all the time, it's so easy to be an armchair critic. And most journalists get it spot on every single day of the week.
Paranoia in social media, Peter.
Yeah, these are easy accusations to throw around. I think what we're seeing in the Yes movement is a perfectly natural reaction to this imbalance in the media. Now, whether the journalists are quite as good as Simon says is, to my mind, questionable.
Remember the SNP marched down to the BBC?
Okay.
No, the SNP didn't, you see.
Sorry,
Yes. Very briefly, in a sentence, time running out, but Peter, will you buy the Sunday Herald again, do you think?
No.
Okay.